Well, hello everyone. Welcome to session number 8 of FileMaker Group Therapy for Citizen Developers. It's so nice to have you back, or newcomers if there are any. Today on our agenda, we're going to be looking at how to add summary parts to layouts. Let's see if I can get this to advance. There we go. We're looking at summary fields and subsummary parts today. On the agenda, how to add summary parts to layouts, including Grand Summary and Subsummary Parts, leading and trailing subsummary parts. We'll also create and place summary fields in summary parts that let us perform summary calculations across a range of records. And then we'll also compare summary fields to calculation fields and see if we can get a sense of the differences there. Very important distinction to be able to make. In the process, we'll be creating an invoice layout as one of the exercises. Hopefully will be useful to many of you. All right, let's look at subsummary parts in layouts. We use subsummary parts in layouts to create groupings in sorted reports. For example, here's a list of the animal records in our database sorted by genus. Notice the repetitions in the genus column. Wouldn't it be great if we could lift that field up and out of the body part into more of a subheading? Well, that's one of the things we can do with subsummary parts. Here, I've added a leading subsummary when sorted by genus part to the layout. I moved the genus field up and out of the body part and into that subsummary part, which improves readability and eliminates a lot of that repetition on the report. Now, it's important to understand that normal fields, meaning non-summary fields, that we place in a leading subsummary part, like this genus field here, they display the value from the first record in the group they summarize. That is, this animal here, Faith, is a bird. And so because Faith has the value bird in its genus field, this subsummary part is displaying bird. Likewise, Bubbles is a cat, Hazel is a dog. These subsummary rows in the report are not real records. They grab their values from the first record in the group that they summarize. That's, again, very important for you to understand. And likewise, normal fields that we place in trailing subsummary parts display the value from the last record in the group. All right, so we see that and we can also present summary calculations for each group of records. For example, we can create a trailing subsummary part. I've done that here, and it repeats once for each group within each group of the sorted records, and we get that calculation that sums up the number of records in each group. All right, so we see that when adding a subsummary part to a layout, we have to declare a sort field. That sort field can also be called the break field. You'll see that phrase used. And it's also very important to know that subsummary parts will not appear unless we sort the records by the break field. The whole report will break down, if you will, if we don't make good on the promise of sorting by the field that we declared we would sort by when we created or added that subsummary part to the layout. Now that's subsummary parts. Grand summary parts in layouts, on the other hand, will appear once at the beginning, in the case of a leading grand summary part, or the end, in the case of a trailing grand summary part, of the report. They may contain summary fields that perform summary calculations across the entire found set, like those counts of the number of animals in each genus group that you just saw. All right, so let's get to work. I'll go ahead and switch on over to the FileMaker database. By the way, there's a fresh copy of this database ready for download. I just put it up there about an hour ago. So if you had downloaded it previously to play along or to practice later, go get a fresh one. There have been some subtle changes made to it. So here in this database, let's take a look at layout mode, and I'm going to create a new layout. And this new layout will be based on the animal table, and we'll call it animal underscore subsum report. It'll be designed for computers in a list arrangement, and finish. I'm going to change this top navigation part that came in by default to a header part. And I also want to narrow the width of this layout down a little bit. It just won't need to be that wide. Using the field picker over here on the left, I'm going to place the name and date of birth fields on the layout. Now, they're not in the right order. I want name first and then date of birth to come next. And I want them to come in a horizontal arrangement with their labels above them. But fortunately, we can just drag fields around here in the field picker to get them in the desired order, so that when we select them all of them that we'd like to drag out, they're in the right order and they'll come across perfectly. Let's go about there. Nudge these down to make sure they're squarely in the body part. Shrink that up. Bring those down a bit. There we go. I know the names aren't that long, so we'll squeeze that up a little bit. And then I also want the name of the genus that animal belongs to, and that's in a related table, genus, here. And likewise, the name of the household, also in a related table. Bring those over. Okay. Let's change that to genus and this to household, like so. And then we'll get these things lined up a little more nicely. There and there. That should look good. Let's see. Exit out of layout mode, save the changes. Okay, and we've got a nice list of animals. I'm going to sort these records by household. Okay, we'll sort them by the name of that household, the title of the household. And we can see that now my family has these two animals, these two pets. The Buchanans have 3, the Smiths have 3, the other Smiths, have 4. And again, this is a great time to invoke the help of a subsummary part. So we'll go back into layout mode, and we'll add a leading subsummary part. Now, there are several ways to add parts. You can use insert part. You can drag the part tool. But I think by far the easiest and most comprehensive way is to use this part setup command. From layouts, I'll choose part setup. It lists the 3 parts that we have presently. And we'll go in and add in a subsummary part when sorted by. And then we're going to sort by the household title field, not the ID number of the household, because then they'd be sorted by 1s, 2s, 3s. We want them alphabetized. Fortunately, we can create this, or we can use a break field, use a field from a related table as the break field for the subsummary. So I'm going to use that same household title field that we have displaying right here as the sort field or break field for this subsummary part. As we click OK, I'll get the opportunity to specify whether I want it to be a leading subsummary or a trailing subsummary, print above or print below. We'll say print above to make it a leading. Okay. And then let's go ahead and we'll say done for now. I'm going to go get the text tool and click up here in that subsummary part and insert as a merge field that same household title field. You might wonder why I'm using a merge field. Actually, it's mostly because of the formatting. In the last session we talked about styles and themes, and I had defined or redefined this leading subsummary 1 text style that's applied automatically to any text that we place into a leading subsummary. I had redefined it before today's session to look the way I wanted to, and so it just takes effect immediately. Whereas with fields, we don't get nearly so many style choices. All right, let's take a look at that. We'll exit out of layout mode, save the changes, and look at that. We've lifted the household name up into those leading subsummary parts, which means that we can remove the household field from the body part to get rid of all this repetition. We'll do that now, like so. Let's say that we want to display a count of how many animal records there are in each group, each household group, and in total. Well, we could put that in the leading subsummary part, but just to demonstrate, let's make a trailing subsummary part. I'll go back into the part setup command and add another part to this layout. Subsummary when sorted by the same field, animal household title, but this time when it asks, I'll say print below. It puts that part then below the body part as opposed to the leading, which appeared above the body part. And we'll say done there. And now to create this summarization, to effectively count the number of fields, count the number of records in each group of animals, in each household grouping of animals, we need a special kind of a field. We need a summary field. Okay. I can't use a calculation field in this context because calculation fields will perform their work within the scope of a single record. Summary fields, on the other hand, are able to aggregate or perform summary calculations across a range of records. So I'll make a new field right here in the field picker. We'll call it, I'm going to prefix it with the letter S for summary, and then just underscore count. And we'll define that as a summary field, making it count. And then we have the opportunity to choose which field we want it to count. Now, it only counts populated fields. It will ignore blank fields. Fields like name and even genus and household could be left blank, but there's one field here that could never be left blank because it's automatically populated, and that's the ID field. So that's the safest one to use when you're trying to get an accurate count of the number of records. I'm going to count the ID field, use that as the summary field. That gets dropped into our body part. We'll drag it down here into the trailing subsummary part and shrink that body back up again. Also want this to look a little better using a style that takes away some of the fancy formatting, the fill and border and so forth. And let's see if that works. Exit layout. And we've got 2 animals in our family, 3 in the Buchanan family, 3 in the Smiths, and 4 in the other Smiths. Fantastic. So that's how a summary field can be used to summarize data in summary parts, subsummary parts, or grand summary parts. Now, I know I've said this before in the introduction, but it's really important to understand this, that the subsummary parts that I've added to this layout will not show properly, they will not appear if the data is not sorted by the field that we based those subsummary parts on, which in this case was the household title field. For example, if I go and sort this data by something different, let's say I sort it by the genus title field, right? Dog, cat, and so forth. Look at what happens. The records are indeed sorted by the genus, but the subsummary parts disappear. We can, however, put multiple subsummary parts on a layout in anticipation of different sort orders. We could make this layout kind of serve multiple purposes, to be able to summarize or group the records by household or by genus, depending on what the user sorts by. To do so, I'll jump back into layout mode and we'll add a couple of more subsummary parts. Create. This time it'll be subsummary when sorted by the genus name or title, genus title. And I'll put one of those above and we'll put another one below. Subsummary when sorted by the title field in the genus table, and we'll put that one below. When you start to include multiple pairs of subsummary parts in a layout, you want to take I call it the sandwich analogy, or the sandwich model. You know how a sandwich has slices of bread on the outside and then maybe condiments just inside of that on the inside parts of each slice of bread, and then there's the meat in the middle. Well, or you could use a bracket mentality. So household title here is the kind of the outer bracket on the top side. That means that household title needs to be, as I drag it down, needs to be the outer bracket on the bottom side. You cannot crisscross your subsummary parts. They need to be fully enclosed inside each other, like the parts of a sandwich, right? Here's the top slice of bread. Here's the inside condiment. Here's the meat. Here's the inside condiment that's on the bottom slice of bread, and here's the bottom slice of bread. So bread and bread, condiment and condiment, meat in the middle. It'll always work that way. Okay, we'll say done there. Those subsummary parts are added, and now we'll put another merge field. I'll just option drag. This would be control drag on a PC. That text object down like so, and we'll merge in the genus title field instead. There we go. And likewise, we'll put a copy of that SCount field, that summary count field, up here in this new subsummary as well. Again, an option drag is, I think, the most efficient way to do that. And we can effectively delete this genus title field from the body part because we're going to have the genuses up in the subsummary. Exit and save. Since the records are currently sorted by genus, we get the genus subsummary values and subsummary parts. But if we change the sort order and say sort by household again, the records rearrange and the household subsummaries appear and the genus subsummaries disappear. So you can pair up subsummary parts like that to your heart's content in whatever sort order you anticipate the users wanting to use on a given layout. Of course, you'll probably want to script that out and give them buttons to click to perform the sorts, probably buttons in the form of the column headings or something else that makes a good interface. Another common use of subsummary parts is in constructing invoice layouts. I've started one, and we're going to finish it together. But first, let me switch back into the slides. Taking a look at our entity relationship diagram again, we're going to be working with, for an invoice layout, we're going to be working with these tables, okay? And we're reminded by looking at the ERD that in each visit, we can perform many treatments on the same patient, and that each treatment can have many line items, which are the medicines and materials used in performing that treatment. Now, since we need our invoice report to show this level of detail, right down to the quantity and price of the medicines and materials used in treating a patient, we have to base this layout on this treatment line table and then use subsummary parts to group and summarize them. Okay, back into the database, and we'll start adding those necessary subsummary parts. Notice that at present, all I have are header, body, and footer parts. So let's go in and add subsummary parts, both leading and trailing, to summarize those treatment line records, which are, again, the cost of the medicines materials used, by the treatment that they were related to, okay? By the treatment that they were related to. So each treatment line record is a child record of a treatment record. And likewise, further upstream, each treatment record is a child of a visit record. So we'll make this one a leading subsummary when sorted by ID treatment, and then we'll make a trailing subsummary likewise when sorted by treatment. There we go. We've got those sandwiching the body part. Okay. Now, in that leading subsummary, let me put the name, the title of the service that we performed, and I'll go ahead and just drag and drop, or option drag, I should say, that title field. And let's see if we can get the description of the service that we performed there. Oh, no, I didn't go far enough. Sorry, let's do this. There, that's the field I wanted to use. The title of the service being performed, like so. And then we also want to list the price of performing that service. Kind of if you want to use the automobile or automotive repair analogy, we have labor and we have parts. Labor would be the veterinarian performing a treatment, and parts would be the treatment line records or material costs. Okay? And so here I'm going to use from the treatment table this service price field. There we go. We also are going to want to summarize these total field values here for the materials. Now, that's where we need a summary field. So I'll come back over here and create a field in the treatment line table. Remember, a summary field has to live in the same table as the field that it summarizes. So since the field that we're trying to summarize is this field here, we're trying to sum a bunch of them up across a range of grouped records, we have to define this summary field in this same treatment line table. So I'll make a new field here. It'll be total of total. Okay, total meaning sum of total. We'll say okay, and then we'll give that field a name, total of total. Okay, that total of total field appears in the body part. We don't want it there. Rather, we want it, you know what, to avoid having to reformat that all with currency, I'm going to do this. I'm going to drag this down like so, and then choose that new total of total field. That way the formatting that I had already applied, the right alignment, the currency formatting and so forth, already is in effect and works great. That body part needs to be shrunk back up again, like so. Let's see how that looks as we exit and save the changes. Right? Why isn't it working? Because the records aren't sorted yet. So let's go and sort to make good on that promise that we made when we said when we added those subsummary parts when sorted by ID treatment. Now the ID treatment field isn't anywhere on this layout, so I won't have any success trying to look for it in this list of fields that are displayed on the current layout. We'll just need to jump over to the current table. And there's ID treatment, double click and sort, and we get our nice groupings with the leading subsummary listing the service performed and the cost of that service, then the materials used, that is the treatment line records that were related to that treatment, and our summary, our total of total field doing its job here to sum up those total material costs. Those line item totals are summed here in that summary field. So the line item rows are grouping together nicely and being summed in the trailing subsummary part just like they ought. However, I happen to know that these last two treatments were performed on the same patient during a single visit and therefore should appear on a single invoice. So we have to group these treatment line records not only by treatment, but also by visit. So we'll go back into layout mode. I'm going to tighten this up a little bit, by the way, there we go. We'll go back here and we'll add a couple more subsummary parts. Just like we did on the first example, we're going to have a sandwich here of a pair of subsummary parts, one or two leading and two trailing, arranged like a sandwich. Create, we'll say subsummary when sorted by. In this case, the sort field, or the break field as it's also known as, is up here in the treatment table, upstream if you will, and it's this ID visit field, right? We want to sort by the visit that the treatments were performed in, that these treatment lines were a part of. I also want all of the treatment line records and treatments for a single visit to appear on their own page. So let's insert a page break before each occurrence of this leading visit subsummary. That'll put each invoice, that'll make each invoice its own separate sheet of paper. We'll say okay there and tell it we want this to be a leading subsummary. FileMaker guessed incorrectly where I wanted it to go. There's no way it could have known, so I'm just going to drag that up where it ought to be, because that's the more outer of the two fields by which we're going to sort. And then likewise, we'll go in and create the trailing subsummary when sorted by ID visit. No page break there. We want the trailing subsummary to appear on the same page. We just want the leading subsummary to kind of be the kickoff of a new page. So we'll make that go below. And there we've got our bottom slice of bread, our top slice of bread, condiments around the meat. All right, that all looks good. Okay. So we've got those two subsummary parts arranged like a sandwich. I'm going to make this leading subsummary part a little taller and bring this big block of merge fields in that I prepared in advance so that you wouldn't have to watch as I built it. I'll also bring these down into place and tighten that up and tighten this up like so. All right, let's see how we're doing so far. Go back into or exit out of layout mode, back into browse mode. Okay, and it's not displaying those visit dates and customer names and all that. Again, because the data is not sorted properly. We just made a promise to sort the records by both visit and treatment, and we haven't made good on that promise. As soon as we do, things will shape up nicely. So we'll come over here and find that ID visit field. There we go, double click on it, put it first. If you're wondering, well, wait a minute, how do we know how to sort? The way I remember it is that I look at my leading subsummary parts, and I remember that the top of the sandwich was the visit subsummary part, and then inside or below that was the treatment subsummary part. Those leading subsummary parts, if you have multiple of them, are your key to what your sort order should be. You're going to sort from the outside in, if you will, or from the most broad category to the most detailed category, right? One visit has many treatments, one treatment has many treatment lines. So we're going to sort by visit first, then secondarily by treatment. As soon as we do, look at that. This will look much better in preview mode because we'll see the page breaks. And now we're starting to get a fairly good looking invoice coming together. Oh, I've got something strange going on here. The animal name didn't come through. We'll fix that. Everything else is looking good. And as we flip through page by page, good, we'll get to this last one where there were two treatments of the same poor animal, right? And we're getting our summary field working to sum up those material costs as expected, and we're getting the service costs over here further on the right. So that's all looking pretty good. Let me see if I can fix that animal name. It's probably just some change in the table names. For example, let's see, treatment line to treatment to visit to animal. And yes, it's title, not name. There we are. Exit and save. Not quite what I wanted there. Let's try that again. Animal. Right, and insert merge field. Well, that seems like the right table, but that's certainly not the right table. So I think I've got a problem with my relationship graph. Let's take a quick look. If we come over to treatment line, this is not a scheduled part of the lesson, by the way, folks. Sorry about this. There we go. There's the long path, and I can see that I accidentally left that at service rather than animal. It should be animals. So let's change it to there and there. We'll make sure that relationship is still intact. ID animal to ID in animal. That looks good. Okay. Right, and then we'll go back and patch that up one final time. Good, bringing over the name of the animal. There we are. Much better. Looking now at preview mode. Okay. Fantastic, there we go. Now, that's all well and good, but this, because of the separation of prices of the services we perform, the labor, and the materials we provide in performing those services, the parts, this invoice is a little trickier than normal. Let's look back at layout mode. The material price is down here in the treatment line table on which this layout is based, but the service title and price are up here. Here's service price. Well, here's the ID of the service. Service title is actually one table occurrence further down the relationship path. So how are we going to sum those treatment price values? Right? These treatment or service price values are up one table from where we are here. We can't use a summary field here in treatment line because a summary field must live in the same table as the field it summarizes. And the field we need to sum lives in treatment, not treatment line. You might think, well, let's use that get summary function. You might be familiar with the get summary function, but sadly we can't use that calculation function either. It's a calc function that returns the value of a summary field for a specified break field. And the reason we can't use it in this context is because get summary calcs must be set up in the same table as the break field, which in this case is in the treatment table. Fortunately, aggregate calculations like the sum function, the average function, the count function, those easiest of all of FileMaker's calculation functions, aggregate calculations that are defined in a parent table, like the visit table in this case, that sum related records in a child table of theirs will work just fine, even in the context of a subsummary part. So let me show you the manage database command, and I'll jump over into the visit table. You see that I've defined this field called total price. It's a calculation field that takes the sum of the service price values for all the related treatment records. Okay, so we get the service prices summed up, and then we add to that the sum of all of the material prices for all the related treatment records. So any one visit has multiple treatments. Each treatment has a total of material prices, likewise has a total of, or has several service prices. And so that's how we're going to do it. Even though this total price field lives 1, 2, 3 levels up from where we are in terms of the relational path, right? Treatment line to treatment to visit, it will still work fine in this context. All right, so back in this layout, we'll drag a copy of service price down into here, and we'll use that total price field that lives up in the visit table. There we go. I'm also going to slide this guy over here, the material total price, so that it lines up with the others. And just for decoration, I'll add a couple of horizontal lines. We'll put one just beneath the column headings, like so, and another one, let's put it just above this part boundary right there. And we'll see how that looks. Okay, and we'll look at this in preview mode. All right, not bad. I don't like where the line is, but we can nudge that down. And if we look at an invoice that has multiple treatments, we see a nice division there of each treatment with its records, the treatment line records, the totals out to the right, and the grand total, which is this calculation field that I just showed you down in the trailing subsummary. All right, so we've got a fairly functional invoice layout. Whew. Back to the slides, and that wraps up what I had in mind to show you today. And look at that, we've even got some time for questions. So any questions on what we just talked about? You're welcome to unmute yourselves or use the chat, whichever you prefer.